one of our founders said, Eden, what on earth are you doing? Like, we're humanistic. Why are you
Mm,
bringing in a robot to talk to
mm.
our candidates? That's not us at all. And then when I said to him, this is why I'm doing, he goes, oh, absolutely. I'm a late joiner to the HR industry, to be honest. I was a florist and self-employed until I was 30. Did a career change and moved into, the white collar industry, basically.
Well, welcome, Eden, and congratulations on making the final 12 of the HR Influence Awards for 2026. What a
Oh,
great achievement among so many worthy and well rounded nominees. Well done, and thank you for joining me today.
oh, really very kind, but thank you. I'm very humbled, but I'm very proud as well. I'm going to own it. I'm really proud that I've been
But you should
selected.
own it. Look, I'm really excited. I'm keen to hear your story. But for those listening, give a bit of background about yourself. So Eden is the head of talent and people experience for Movember and has a distributed team across 6 different countries. That's pretty impressive. He founded the Total Talent Community. Keen to hear about that more, and hosts the Total Talent podcast. And I love this one, has embedded an AI agent named Joel into his talent function. His EVP framework has 3 pillars: good cause, good vibes, good crew, operationalizes Movember's mental health mission inside the organization. So,
Oh.
Eden, tell us about your career. How did you end up leading the people function at Movember? And what's the path that got you here?
Yeah, sure. Look, I'm a late joiner to the HR industry, to be honest. I was a florist and self-employed until I was 30. Did a career change and moved into, the white collar industry, basically. And it was a role where I was on the phones and directing members of an association to HR support when the Fair Work Act came in. That was kind of my first. I was a little call center agent, and I absolutely loved it, by the way. But I kind of hadn't worked in an office environment before, so I got very into the after work drinks, and there are a few stories there that we won't go into here. But then I from there shifted into agency recruitment and really found my niche in terms of talent acquisition and recruitment, and had many successful careers in agency. I moved internal and then moved into leadership within Monash University through to AIA Australia, Flybys, where my role became much more expanded than talent. Did a little bit of consulting. Went back into the internal world with REA Group on a parental leave cover, and just realized at that point, I want to do this. I want to be in a leadership role, and I want to continue on that journey, the self-employment thing that I tried a little bit before the REA contract was not for me. I was way too lonely. But then drawing me to Movember was really, I'm at that age now. You may not know by looking at me, but no, I've stopped having Botox, but you can see every one of my years. I'm at that point where the work that I do needs to contribute to something bigger than me, and the Movember cause is something that I've been behind. I lost an uncle to suicide. I've lost several friends to suicide. Men's health is just really, really important. I've done Movember every year, so an opportunity to actually do what I love within a mission that I'm fully behind, with just these incredibly inspiring people throughout the world. I was like, this is my calling, right? So I feel like that journey, I finally reached where I should be. And I really do feel that I love getting out of bed every day. And, I love it so much. I probably work a little bit too much, but that's another story.
I really love this, right? Because I can definitely feel your energy through the camera. I got to ask you though, you've still got your Mo. So is that a representation that Movember is all year round, men's health is all year round, or what's the significance of you still donning the Mo?
Well, you know what? That's a really good point, because a lot of people think of Movember as being the campaign that we run in November, and I will go into at various points throughout this conversation, the broader work that we do throughout the year, because it's pretty big and pretty powerful on a global scale. But the only time I shave it off is the 1st of November. That's when we go smooth, and that's when we grow. It's really funny. Movember was born, the moustache was incredibly silly. You would have, people like Ned Flanders would have a moustache, or you would think back to the kind of porn stars of the 70s, right? Like it was a really 70s crazy, like the daggy thing at the time of Movember launching. But now they're so trendy. So you can't tell whether someone's got it on to be raising awareness for men's health or whether someone is just trying to look cool these days. Like moustaches are a big thing. I'd like to think we contributed to that, to
Well,
putting moustaches on the faces of everyone in Australia.
well, if it helps, it suits you. So,
Oh, cheers. You could
so
easily shave your beard and
yeah,
you could be rocking yours too, mate. You could go full handlebar.
the handlebars. Eden, so listen, interesting career path, right? From owning your own florist, to being in a call center, recruitment, and your career now really, like you said, where you feel like you should be in what you're doing in people and culture. So, do you feel like those early careers have set you up? And if so, what were some of the skills, what were some of the thought processes that you've taken from those roles that still serves you today?
Yeah, that's a really great question, Rudy, and thanks for asking because I actually have been reflecting on this quite a bit in, when we're talking Workforce 5.0 and the rise in AI technology and the changes to the way each and every one of us will be working and, really reflecting on those human skills that I've learned throughout my career. And I think the really big one for me is creativity. And I feel I'm in this environment where the skills that I learned as being a professional florist for such a long, chunk of my career, it's now the time that I'm really bringing that to the table. I did a big piece of people analytics work yesterday with one of my team members, Keo, when we were able to use Claude AI to do what would have taken us weeks. And so what that means is that, we've got this wonderful technology that can analyze our people data. Then Keo and I could really focus on, okay, well, how do we bring this to life and how do we creatively tell these stories to the people that matter? And, I think that creativity and that storytelling and being able to tap into that mind is where we all need to be focused, right? I think the people that haven't been able to do that or perhaps don't have that skill are going to find it harder to adjust in this kind of automated world that we're moving into.
So tell me about creativity and data and HR. And I'm saying that because normally HR is, policies, procedures, I'm going to say it, the police, right? Whereas I think it should be data as well, right? So how do you bring that balance between how people have viewed HR traditionally versus the way you talk about it, which is creativity and data? To me, they go hand in hand. It tells
Right.
a story, right? And
Absolutely.
I think people think that data is not a creative art. I actually really think it is. So
Mm.
I'm keen to understand how you marry the creativity, the data, and HR all together.
Yeah, and this is where I'm probably very unconventional, and I'm very fortunate that the chief people officer I report into, who I've reported into before, is quite unconventional as well. And I'm really glad again why I love my job that I found her again. I think where the trap we fall into with the HR industry is that we are just bombarded with these principles and ways of doing things, these frameworks that have been in place for a really long period of time. And we actually don't listen to the needs of our organization and we don't listen to our people and therefore design practices, processes, experiences is the big word here for our people. We follow what we've always done before, or we follow what we're told is best practice because we've read it in some, report that has been released or some thought leader has told us that for the last 20 years. I really believe where we can be creative here, particularly with data, is that we're drawing that data and that insights from our people, interpreting it, and we can interpret that with AI as well. It is incredibly powerful in terms of what suggestions it can provide you. But then you take a creative lens and say, what does this mean? And how do we roll this out? And how do we create unique Movember experiences with this data. I don't like the HR police thing. I don't think we really are that in 2026, but I know we are in a lot of environments, and those environments will suffer. But yeah, for me, it's creating experiences. That's where the creativity comes in, with data backing those experiences. So you're using design thinking at the end of the day to, develop, test, learn, iterate. It's not about perfection anymore. It's about experimentation. And I think our people need to get comfortable with experimentation, our employees, because that's the environment again that we're moving into. A lot of our safe work is being automated.
I really like what you've said there around people data, right? That also means you've got to be, as an organization, capturing different type of data that you would normally capture in terms of performance and so forth, right? So what are some of the people data that you capture or that you're advocating for if you're not capturing just yet? What do you think is important in that space?
Yeah, for sure. And this has been a big piece of work that, I talked about my colleague Keo that we've actually just delivered today, our first iteration of that. I think one of the things that we don't do very well is our talent data when it comes to performance potential, which in most frameworks is a 9 box. And then you look at your kind of flight risk criticality, which we look at organizational risk and role criticality. We really have hypersimplified that into 2 6 boxes. And then we overlay those 2 6 boxes to give us kind of a risk score in terms of who are the employees that we need to focus on, that are our superstar performers, but are also potentially in a high risk role or could develop into a high risk role. And what do we need to do with succession planning? What do we need to do with development? What do we need to do with career pathways? So I think that's a really important part of it. But then you've got all of this other data now that you can overlay. Like, I think talent at the center is where you start, and then you overlay engagement, you overlay things like tenure, you overlay even risk factors or risk signals like it could be absenteeism data, all of those kind of things. If you start with talent at the center, you build around that. And that's what we're trying to do, because then it leans into, okay, how do we design positions that are meaningful to both Movember, but also to our people, to support their development, to increase their engagement, to lower their absenteeism, to drive productivity, at the end of the day, to deliver on our vision to change the face of men's health, right? So the starting point is there. It's there. It's using talent as the anchor and then
Yeah.
feeding all the data around it.
And I really like that because that is some of our thinking as well in terms of the individual being at the center and then building on top of it. We kind of call it me, my team, my organization, and they all
Right.
bring another layer of insights and input that really the people function is really uniquely positioned to digest and tell a story, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's where it becomes really powerful. So
Mm.
you've got a lot going on. You've got obviously working at Movember. You've got Total Talent. You've got the podcast. You've got Joel, which I'm going to get to in a second. The AI agent.
Yeah.
What's the thing you're most energized by right now?
I have to say, like, I love the environment we're in. I know a lot of, people, and a lot of our people included, are uncomfortable with where technology is going. But I'm incredibly energized by just the fact that I do already have an augmented team and what that could look like in the future. I'm again energized by, I suppose, the talent of the human beings that I have in my team. I have two very, very strong performers. One of them is very analytical and one of them is very creative. Being the glue that holds those two together is pretty much the ideal scenario, because I tend to switch between the both. I am energized by where we're moving as an industry. I would love to see more people experimenting
Mm.
and coming along on that journey rather than resisting. What I love at the moment is we are in a position we've never been in before, where we can really define, design, and deliver on what our value is as a profession, as an industry, because it's all of this is bubbling away. And if we can grab it in this moment and say, this is who I want to be as a talent leader, this is where I want our talent team to be positioned within Movember. That's never really happened before. You're always, fighting to have that seat at the table,
Yes.
and, you know, everyone's comparing themselves to what other organizations are doing. I'll look at their careers website versus my careers website. Look at, the programs that they're doing in terms of skills taxonomy. We should be doing that as well. Like we can throw that all out the window now, and we can actually say, what do we want to be as an industry, as an organization, as a profession? Like there's so much to it that for me, I'm energized and excited by it, as you can tell. I just think this is a moment in time we've never had and we probably will never have again.
I really like it, right? Because again, for me, it comes back down to, say historically, you wouldn't have associated data with HR.
Mm,
And I agree with you. I think we're now, because of technology, because of how people are working, how integrated we are now, I'd say our profession has a lot more to give than just policies and procedures, just the
yeah.
police. So, you're talking about being strategic. How do you communicate? If you were to give advice to other people in your position that might not work at a Movember that's forward thinking, how do you influence the powers that be, the leadership team? Well, Mike almost flew off the table then. How do you influence, the top brass to see you not just as the police, not just as the policies, procedures part, but essentially the key to people data and unlocking the potential of the organization, that strategic aspect? What advice would you give?
Well, look, I'd argue any executive team is going to want to see that, as I was describing, a snapshot of a risk profile of, talent and roles. They're going to want to see that because that is board level information, right? So I think in order to build, if it's credibility we're talking about, or, for lack of a better term, and I know that term's thrown around too much in terms of having that seat at the table, you just need to, you need to gather that insight. Like you need to start somewhere. I think the problem that, as an industry, particularly the talent acquisition side, is that we fall on the hamster wheel and we do the same thing over and over again. And we expect to build the credibility through that. Now, we build the credibility at, the hiring manager level because we're delivering and we're filling the role and we're doing it in a great way and providing them a great experience, whatever it might be, but we're not rolling it up because we're probably not capturing that insight that's
Mm.
coming through that pipeline and through that funnel. So I think, you know, you've got to start somewhere and gather what you can and use the technology to tell you what that data is telling you, because we can do that right away. Like you don't need to be a data scientist, you don't need to be a
Yeah.
data analyst, and you don't need a data engineer to bring everything together anymore. Like you don't have to be in this mecca environment where everything is really polished and really super. Like just try. And the more you try and the more conversations that you have and the more you share, you'll find that rhythm and you'll find what's powerful for your organization. I think that's all it is, mate. I don't think there's really a right or wrong.
And the more intentional you become, right? I think what I'm hearing from you is experiment, find out what data you can unearth, what you've got, but then expand that, see where else you can gain insights. And soon you'll be able to, like I said, be more intentional in terms of what you're doing and what you're reporting on. That sounds what you're saying to me anyway.
Totally. And I think, we will, in 5 years' time, that data will be self-serve for leaders. Like
Yeah.
it definitely will be,
Yeah.
right? But what they can't do is tell the story. So that's where we
Yes.
need to start. That
Love it.
we're human people. We're in the industry of human beings. So we like to tell a story. We like to talk to people. We like human connection. So remembering that all of that is things are moving so quickly that that's all going to be automated. Pulling all of that information is going to be automated. But what the technology can't do is tell that authentic humanistic story. So it's amplifying that, bring it to life. That's
You're
that would be
speaking
the
my language. I'm excited. Like,
I'm glad. I'm glad I'm speaking someone's language because I'm sure there's a lot of people going, "What the hell is he on about?"
No,
Right?
no, no. I think it's good. So speaking of talking my language, tell me
Well,
about AI Joel, right? So your
yeah.
AI agent embedded in your talent team. What does Joel do? How did you get started? Does he get performance reviews, and has he ever failed one?
Yeah, and it's another great example of how to get buy-in on something like this because I got it a little bit wrong to start with in terms of how I presented it. Joel is an agent, supports us in a number of ways, but predominantly where I think is the most powerful is the engagement it has with the general population, being people that apply for roles. In terms of the Movember culture, we are very big on identifying a trend, assessing and hiring individuals that have a strong connection to our cause naturally. They too may have a story around losing a friend, like me losing an uncle. They may be a young man that has been through testicular cancer, all of those kind of things. People come to us for a reason. In all honesty, I mean, you don't move into the not for profit space sector, the charity space for dollars and bonuses and paychecks or whatever, however you want to put it. That's not the core driver, right? You move into this space because you're connected to the cause. Now, the reason I wanted to introduce Joel is because when I started at Movember, I immediately felt very alarmed that 300 people would apply for a role, perhaps 10 would have a phone conversation with
Mm,
us, perhaps 3 or 4 would go through an interview process, and
mm,
we would hire one of them. Now, the human point of that was probably at the phone conversation for those top 10. 90%, of the 100, I can't remember what figure I gave you then, but let's say it was 100. No,
300, I think
yeah,
it was.
exactly. Let's say 10 people go through that process and, if it's 100 applications, 90 don't. They don't get to share their story that is so important to them with us. Now, I, Sean, and Keo can't interview 100 people in a day, right? And we're global as well. We're in 6 different time zones. So for me, it was how do we facilitate a way for people to be able to share their stories and respectfully acknowledge those stories throughout various different touch points. Now, some of that occurs at application stage where they will talk about our values in the application stage. They'll be able to share which is more of a free text cover letter rather than a formal one, but their connection to what we do at Movember and why it's important to them. But then importantly, from that point, they can engage either with Joel, and most people do engage with Joel, and they will share their story and they will have a 30-minute two-way conversation. It isn't a question one, how
Yeah,
would you da 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 da? Question two, like it's conversational. It's very advanced technology. To share that with us, and then
love it.
what we can do on the back of that, rather than a blanket, hey, thanks, but sorry, you haven't met all the criteria for this role. We can actually acknowledge their experience and their story, which, if not, isn't something that's very important and very emotive to them. It's someone that they love, right? We
Yeah.
all have a man in our lives that we love, or we love ourselves, but that connection there. And that's why we introduced it. And I think that's why it's powerful. And I think when you're looking at any AI technology is to zoom out. It's not all about productivity. There's got to be a greater purpose if it's going to be successful. And I didn't articulate that incredibly well when I brought it in. I brought it in and I just assumed everyone would know why I'm doing it. I had, even one of our founders said, Eden, what on earth are you doing? Like, we're humanistic. Why are you
Mm,
bringing in a robot to talk to
mm,
our candidates? That's not us at all. And then when I said to him, this is why I'm doing it, he goes, oh, absolutely. Like, if we can talk
mm.
to everyone, right? Like, so
Love it.
you've got to get the purpose and the meaning right. And again, that's going back to storytelling, which I
Yep.
fumbled on, right? None of us are perfect, but yeah, that's really why we're using Joel. But Joel does a lot of other stuff for us. He's able to source candidates for us, while we're all asleep, and while Canada's awake, he can reach out to candidates while we're, in bed.
Love
So
it.
there's a lot there, but I think the using AI technology to be humanistic, which is a very controversial thing for me to say, but I think there is meaning and there is power in that.
I really like it. I mean, I think you can't be everywhere and everything to everyone. And I think just letting people share their stories also quite powerful, right? So, I mean, you touched on culture, you touched on mission, you touched on purpose. So, what does building culture actually mean to you? So, not the textbook answer, but in practice, how do you build culture at Movember?
Well, as you know, you probably don't. You're never going to textbook answer for me. I think that's a really big question. I think, when you're looking at Movember, we're a global movement, and we fund ourselves through the Movember Institute of Men's Health. We fund over 70 different programs throughout the world that can be from tackling issues like, young men in a digital world, very topical at the moment in terms of masculinities. It can be
Mm.
the work that we do with, health systems and trying to tackle some health inequities when it comes to gender responsive healthcare. It can be programs that we do across the world with Indigenous communities and Indigenous men and their health. 70 different programs, but what underpins even our fundraising activity with the Movember movement, the programmatic work that we do through the Institute of Men's Health, the one thing that glues that together is community. So I'm really focused and passionate about all of our people initiatives, whether that is our leadership cohort and our leadership development programs, whether that is through our mentoring programs, whether that's through just our social aspect of the work that we do, whether it's through performance. Community needs to be the glue that holds us together as well, because it's what holds our movement together and our programs together. So I think culture is really community, and communities they're vast, they're diverse, they're rich, they're, all of those wonderful things need to be acknowledged when you're talking community. But I think, shifting away from even the language of culture and moving that into, we call it the Mo train, but, the Movember community of employees is who we are. Cultures, if that's the terminology to use, they live and breathe and they change, and they adapt, and that's all really positive. It can be negative as well, depending, on certain environments, but, you just need to make sure that it doesn't become this is our culture and you must come and fit into it. It needs to be something that, completely evolves and changes as different perspectives come in, as different people with different backgrounds come in, all of that. I think it's the living, breathing nature of it.
So,
And for me, community underpinning everything.
you took the words out of my mouth. It kind of sounds like community is underpinning all of your tactics, your strategic direction, your tactics. It's all got to be focused around community and therefore being your culture essentially, right? So,
Mm.
in your experience, you've worked across many industries by the sounds of it and different roles as well. So, from your perspective, what are some of those telltale signs that a company's culture is not aligned with its purpose or not aligned with its strategy? So, what are some of those early warning signs that people leaders that you think should be aware of?
Oh, look, I think it all comes down to authenticity. If you're not telling a story that you truly believe, or is an accurate reflection of your experience, then there's a missing link. And, you know, really focusing on where most of my career has been within the talent space, right? Like I've been in, roles, or I've represented roles from my agency days where I'm telling that story and I know it's not.
It's not real.
Yeah. And I think don't gloss things over. One of the lessons I've learned working globally is, I was thinking, oh, do I need to adjust my style when I'm meeting and interviewing, or, with people within the United Kingdom or the United States or Canada, whether it be internal employees, whether it be, external candidates, do I need to adjust how I work? But I feel that just being my true authentic self and a lot of my Aussie bogan that comes out is actually really charming for these people, right? Like I get so many messages from people that I'm talking to within those regions when they're like, oh my gosh, I've never had a job interview like that before. That was just so wonderful. Thank you so much for making me smile. Like I think that's really important. I
Yeah.
think authenticity, if you're not connected to the cause or the vision or the purpose of the organizer, and you're not being a true representative of what that is, you're not being authentic.
Yeah.
And that's when you know. I think that's when you know if you feel like you're just showing up
Yeah.
or you're telling a story that is scripted or, you just feel you're going through the yeah, I think so. I do.
So you've been in recruitment, you've hired a lot of people. Have you ever made a bad hire? And what did it teach you about people and culture?
Oh gosh, worried about who might be listening. But no, look, I think, reflecting back on that, I think there have been times in my career that I like to do a lot. I put a lot of pressure on myself to get things done quickly. And over the years, there have been times where I've looked back and gone, I can tell this person isn't enjoying what they've moved into. I can tell that I haven't taken the time to really get to know them as a human being, to get to know their personality, to get to know what their drivers are. I've made a few assumptions along the way. Every person that goes through a recruitment process, once they've gone through the process with Joel, my team, we spend a good 30 minutes to 45 minutes with them before they go even into an interview. And again, that's across the globe. So, once we've got it to that interview shortlist that is much shorter than the original application list I talked about earlier, we spend the time to do that. We do profiling as well, some, predictive leadership, how to bring out the best in this individual. What are they looking for? We do that as well, and that's part of our onboarding journey. But again, you can't get to the core of a human being unless you spend that time. And I know a lot of people look at what we have rolled out with Joel and they think that we are taking away that human element, but we're not. We're actually elevating it somewhere else. And we're giving ourselves that time to spend with anyone that is going to interview to make sure we are getting it right and make sure that we are providing the right opportunity at the right time for the right person. And it's okay if it's not right. And that's okay. And, recruiters get a little bit bummed when people opt out, but that's totally okay for that to happen, right?
And so, we've gone from recruitment, and it sounds like you guys are really hands on, really interested in understanding what makes people tick. You use Joel to get a bit of a deeper dive into that as well, which I love because it gives you that time back to really get to speak to people. So, what advice would you give people leaders navigating diverse personalities across an organization, from, the exec table down to the front line? What are some of the piece of advice you could give people?
Oh, look, I think when you're looking at personalities is a hard one for me, and it's a hard one to define. I don't think you can judge the success of an individual or their performance or their engagement necessarily just based on their personality. I think what you want to look at is a values assessment. I think if you can spend time focusing on your organizational values, and we do that in those humanistic conversations that I mentioned. Ours are
Yes.
fun, courageously kind, change agent, better together, accountable, and remarkable. Now, drawing that out in terms of personality, motivations, drivers, what gets them out of bed every morning, how they like to work, how they like to operate, all of that is kind of your, let's say, work personality.
Yep.
That might be a
Yep.
good way to describe it. Work
Yeah.
personality. Like if you're able to link it to values, that's when you're going to be able to drive that out and you're going to know whether that's going to work both for them and both for you as a leader. So I think if you take a values first approach to, you know, getting to know your team, if it's an existing team or building your team, getting to, the core of that is really important.
I really like that, right? Because at the end of the day, a team is a bunch of individuals with, different motivators, different reasons. And, if you can understand how that all comes together to drive your culture, to drive forward a single purpose or a single mission, that becomes super powerful. And HR people with that kind of knowledge, with that kind of understanding, would pretty much be unstoppable in
Yeah.
terms of the impact they can make, at the senior leadership level, the board level, and the organization more broadly. Right?
Absolutely, absolutely, and you can use data to underpin that as I was talking about in terms of the talent work that we do. But, it's being mindful of your biases as well.
Yes.
right? And and you were talking about my podcast. I did a whole episode on this recently because we all have them in hate, and we forget that we do, and we tend to move really quickly. But we're attracted, and that's human nature, right? And there's all sorts of psychology around this. And I'm no academic, so I'm not going to quote anything here. It's not my style. But we are drawn to people that are like us, and we pick up on cues of people like us. We form a natural connection with people that are like us. So, if you move away from that and you focus on values as being the core driver, then you build this wonderful, rich, diverse team around you that the contribution is so much greater than if you've got a team of 5 Edens, right? Like,
I like that, right?
yeah.
Because it's not only just the technical strengths of individuals, it's also their behavioral and motivational personality,
Mm.
as you call it, work personality strengths too, right? So you can have a team of diverse people, you can have a team of different personalities, work personalities and technical skills. But I think there's one thing that needs to resonate across all of them is there's got to be that defined mission, the defined purpose, call it your culture, or in your case, as you could call it, the foundation of community, right? Because without that, the rest falls apart. Oh, did I lose you there for a second?
I think you did for a second. Yeah.
Okay. Well, look, I've got one final question for you. So finally, if you could go back, what three pieces of advice would you give your younger self about HR, about work, about people and culture?
Oh, three pieces of advice to give to my younger self. I would like to say, if it was around the time of, I never thought I could do this kind of work. So the first thing I would say is to back myself. I was always, I was raised in an era where creative people do creative work, and mathematical people do white collar
Yeah,
work, and all of that. So I think the first thing I would say would be your creativity is going to be your greatest asset. That would be number one. The second thing I would say is to be authentic at all times and never doubt myself. People will either be drawn to me or not drawn to me, but that's okay. Like, if I'm my authentic self, I'm going to love the work that I'm doing. And again, I would say, and I've learnt this from my leader Fiona, that I mentioned I've reported to twice. Never follow others, and always take that time to design something or think about something that is unique to you, unique to your organization, unique to your people. She's someone who is incredibly intelligent and incredibly well versed in HR, but has a firm belief that you can rewrite the playbook.
love
And
it.
it's taken me a long time to realize that. And when I had that moment with her in a previous organization, that's when success really started for me. So that would be my other piece of advice. Just don't listen to everything, quieten down the noise, and feel free to experiment. There's no right or wrong. Test and learn. Test and learn would be that lesson.
I really like that because, if you think about HR more broadly, HR traditionally is about um, risk avoidance.
Mm.
Right. And so experimentation is all about accepting the unknown and
That's right.
innovation, right? So I do think the era of that risk avoidance mentality is definitely changing and shifting. I think it's just finding that balance of what does that mean. And I think coming back to what you said earlier, I think the key commonality there has to be data,
Yeah.
right? So
Agreed.
so you can prove how your innovation, you're not just innovating for the sake of innovating. There's
Mm.
actually some data behind that. I really like that.
Yeah, and not to be afraid when it fails. I fail on a daily basis, and I'm comfortable with that, right? Not everything you try is gonna work.
Well, mate, you won with us. So, well done. Congratulations again. I've really enjoyed this chat. To be honest, it could have gone for a lot longer. So, look, we are creating a bit of a community ourselves here as well, with our top 12. And, this is only the starting point for us, Eden. So be very keen to bring you into our fold as well. And, for us to build this community a bit stronger as well. So, well done again, and thank you for your time.
Thanks so much, mate. Anything with the word community, I'm there. It's been so great to catch up. Thank you.